A group of U.S. Navy Special Warfare troops have been punished for flying a Trump flag. An unspecified number of Navy Special Warfare forces have been punished for flying a Trump flag on a military convoy seen traveling through Louisville, Kentucky on January 29th. Photos of the flag flying on a military vehicle went viral on social media. Military members are prohibited from endorsing any political candidate, campaign, or cause when in uniform. While the vehicles were unmarked, an investigation found they belonged to Navy Special Warfare service members who, quote, violated the spirit and intent of applicable DoD regulations concerning the flying of flags and the apparent endorsement of political activities, according to Lieutenant Jackie Maxwell of the Naval Special Warfare's Group 2 in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Maxwell said administrative corrective measures were taken, but declined to elaborate on the punishments or how many were punished. For Newsbeat Social from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
7 years after Sweden discontinued compulsory military service, the country has decided to bring back its draft. Starting next year, Sweden expects to conscript at least 4,000 young men and women annually for military service. The country's defense minister cited two big reasons for the buildup: Russia's annexation of Crimea and continued Russian aggression in the Ukraine. Even though Sweden has worked with NATO in the past, the country isn't a part of the alliance. That means NATO wouldn't have to come to the country's aid in the event of an incident with Russia. So Sweden has decided it needs to take defense matters into its own hands.
Disney's live-action version of loyal sidekick LeFou from Beauty and the Beast will be the studio's first openly gay character. The news was confirmed by the film's director Bill Condon, who told Attitude magazine there will be an exclusively gay moment in the movie. Josh Gad, who portrays the live-action LeFou, tweeted he is beyond proud to play Disney's first LGBTQ character. It seems fitting that Disney would allow this retelling of Beauty and the Beast to be its first film with a character who's officially gay. Howard Ashman, a lyricist for the original animated film, was gay. Just before he joined the film's production team, he was diagnosed with AIDS. According to Condon, Ashman saw the Beast and the curse placed on him as a metaphor for AIDS. Ashman died from complications of the disease before the musical was released in theaters. But some outlets have pointed out that making LeFou an openly gay character isn't that revolutionary, since he's one of the story's villains, and a minor one at that. Disney's live-action version of Beauty and the Beast will premiere in theaters March 17th.
On Thursday, a union of 53 companies backed transgender rights at the U.S. Supreme Court. Among the companies participating are Apple, Microsoft, and IBM. Oral arguments are scheduled on whether the Gloucester County School Board in Virginia violated a federal anti-discrimination law when it blocked Gavin Grimm from using the boys' bathroom. Grimm is a female-born transgender high school student who identifies as male. A ruling is due by the end of June. The joint brief from the companies says they are concerned about the stigmatizing and degrading effects of the policy implemented by the school board.
On Wednesday, Facebook announced in a post that it will be launching new suicide prevention tools for its Facebook Live feature to make it easier for friends of users to contact them or help them get help. The enhanced Facebook Live suicide prevention tools are coming out quickly after 3 people killed themselves while streaming live in recent months. The changes were developed with the help of several mental health organizations, including Save.org, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, Forefront, and Crisis Text Line.
Bangladesh has created a loophole in its child marriage law, despite having one of the highest rates of child marriage in the world. According to UNICEF, 52% of girls in Bangladesh are married before age 18 and 18% before age 15. Existing law sets the minimum age for marriage at 18 for females and 21 for males. CNN reports the new revision allows parents or guardians to obtain a court order allowing underage children to marry if it's in their, quote, best interest. The New York Times reports Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has said the revision will prevent pregnant teenagers from being ostracized. But human rights activists say the new law threatens progress made in reducing teenage pregnancy and maternal and infant mortality. Some also worry the law will result in parents marrying daughters off to their rapists to avoid the stigma surrounding pregnancy out of wedlock. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
Boeing is cutting at least 1,800 jobs from its Seattle manufacturing plant this year, according to Bloomberg. The layoffs include 1,500 mechanics and more than 300 engineers. Back in December, the company told employees it would thin out the workforce by the end of the year because of dwindling sales prospects and tough competition. The company said competitors at Airbus were streamlining their own operations. Right now, Boeing employs more than 71,000 workers at its Washington plant. Just last month, President Donald Trump traveled to Boeing's South Carolina plant to tout the company's accomplishments.
Jobs is one of the primary reasons I'm standing here today as your president.
Trump and Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg have met at least 3 times since Trump was elected. In December, Trump criticized Boeing for the price of the program to replace Air Force One. Muhlenberg reportedly said
The Hershey Company is expected to cut 15% of its global workforce. In a statement released on February 28th, the chocolate maker, famous for Hershey's Kisses and Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, said the workforce reduction was part of a restructuring program. With the restructuring moves, Hershey is expected to save between $150 million and $175 million by the end of 2019. The chocolate maker also cut its projected profit forecast for 2017. At the end of 2016, Hershey had about 16,000 full-time employees worldwide and over 1,600 part-time workers, as noted by Reuters. If the numbers hold true, the Chicago Tribune estimates that 2,700 Hershey employees could lose their jobs. As of this recording, Hershey operates 8 factories outside the United States, but with looming cuts, that number could change. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
A federal investigation into a series of bomb threats against Jewish centers and schools around the country is now believed to have been a coordinated effort. According to consultants, the latest wave of threats weren't sent from automated robocalls. Paul Goldenberg, National Director for Secure Community Network, said, in fact, on many of the calls there was engagement between the caller and the institutions. Bomb threats were called into 30 Jewish community centers and schools in at least 18 states earlier this week. So far, there have been no reports of injury.
On Thursday, a Canadian government official told reporters with Reuters that it is not automatically guaranteed that more asylum seekers will seek to illegally cross into Canada from the United States as the weather improves. Since January 1st, several hundred people, most of which are from Africa, have defied winter conditions to walk across the border into Canada. However, security experts have predicted that more people will attempt to enter Canada as the weather improves and the snow melts.
Certain birth defects were 20 times more prevalent in babies born to Zika virus-infected mothers in the U.S. in 2016 than they were before the virus cropped up in the United States, a CDC study suggests. The finding strengthens the evidence that a mother's Zika infection during pregnancy raises her baby's risk of microcephaly and other brain malformations. The study examined data collected through birth defect surveillance programs in several states in 2013 and 2014.
A man in northern Illinois has died after being hit by a tree in a powerful storm. 31-year-old David A. Johnson died of severe head trauma this week at a hospital in Peoria, which brings the regional death toll to 4. Johnson was in a backyard with his family when the storm uprooted a tree that landed on them. His father-in-law, Wayne Tuntland, was also killed in the accident.
California is edging towards a historic amount of rainfall for winter. Heavy rains have draped the drought-stricken Golden State in one of the wettest winters in recent memory. The precipitation has swollen rivers and reservoirs, leading to flooding in certain areas of the state. The wet weather has also cascaded the Sierra Nevada mountains with twice as much snow as usual. Although there are still lingering concerns, the National Drought Mitigation Center stated that recent rains have left less than 10% of the state in drought condition.
At least 3 people have been pronounced dead after deadly tornadoes caused major damage in the Midwest. According to the National Weather Service, 20 tornadoes were confirmed. On Thursday, the cleanup work was set to begin in those affected areas. Governors in areas hit by the storms toured damaged towns, vowing to assist citizens in the process of recovery. In a statement issued by Missouri Governor Eric Greitens, he said, "We have already deployed strike teams and resources, and this community should know that the full weight and support of the state of Missouri is behind you."
Reuters is reporting that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo ordered the state police hate crimes task force on Thursday to investigate vandalism at a Jewish cemetery in Rochester, the third known case of a Jewish cemetery desecration in the country in the last 2 weeks. Cuomo said the vandalism in Rochester appeared to be part of a surge in threats and vandalism targeting Jewish organizations this year. About 100 headstones were knocked over at a Jewish cemetery in Philadelphia last weekend, and about 170 headstones were knocked over in a Jewish cemetery in St. Louis. Scores of Jewish community centers around the country have fielded bomb threats that later proved hoaxes.
A new experiment suggests that temperatures across Earth's mantle are about 60 degrees Celsius higher than previously thought. Such toasty temperatures would make the mantle runnier than early research suggested. This development could help explain the details of how tectonic plates glide on top of the mantle. Study co-author Emily Serafine is a geophysicist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts and at MIT. She said scientists will argue over 10-degree changes, so changing it by 60 degrees is quite a large jump.
The Federal Bureau of Investigation said on Thursday it would review the hanging death of an 18-year-old black Washington teen that was initially ruled a suicide after a Muslim civil rights group raised questions about the investigation. The body of Ben Kaita, who was Muslim, was found hanging from a tree in January in a wooded area in the city of Lake Stevens, Washington, about 30 miles north of Seattle, according to police. A week later, after speaking with Kaita's family members, the medical examiner determined that there was not enough evidence to reach that conclusion and changed the manner of death to undetermined.
We find the decision, frankly, to be shocking, and we were even more surprised after they indicated that they would backtrack, that they would and not even allow us entry into the country. A really unprecedented step.
Omar Shaker of Human Rights Watch has been denied entry into Israel for the second time, but Israel's foreign ministry now says its denial to grant him a tourist visa was an error.
So we are left confounded. It's unclear whether this is an example of gross incompetence or whether there's something else going on.
Human Rights Watch first tried to send Shaker there on a work visa. After it was denied in February, Israel said he'd be allowed entry on a tourist visa. Now that's been denied too.
The only explanation we've received is the explanation conveyed in both of those letters, where they failed to distinguish between our justified criticism of some Israeli policies grounded in international law and human rights, and based on the same methodology we use to document 90 other countries around the world. They failed to distinguish between that and political propaganda.
In 1997, Human Rights Watch shared a Nobel Peace Prize for taking part in a campaign to ban landmines. The group has reported on human rights abuses by both the Israeli government and Palestinian administrations in the West Bank and Gaza. Other countries that don't allow Human Rights Watch into their borders are Uzbekistan, Sudan, North Korea, Cuba, and Venezuela.
ISIS has reportedly set its sights on China. A 30-minute video in which the terror group vows to hit Chinese targets was released on Monday, February 27th. According to the U.S.-based Site Intelligence Group, which analyzed the video, ISIS fighters who are members of China's Muslim Uyghur minority vowed to return home and, quote, shed blood like rivers. An ISIS militant executed an alleged informant after making the threat, reportedly in front of children. The video also reportedly showed armed children executing other so-called informants. Xinjiang province, home to China's Muslim Uyghur population, has experienced violent terror attacks in recent years. China has led harsh crackdowns against the Uyghurs, and some analysts claim the treatment has driven many to join ISIS. On March 1st, China's foreign ministry spokesman Geng Shuang asked for international cooperation, quote, to combat such terrorist forces. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Camberry Caldwell.
Federal prosecutors said Thursday that they have captured the members of a violent street gang who killed 3 Long Island high school students last year. The victims included 2 girls who were attacked with a machete and baseball bats as they walked through their suburban neighborhood. 13 alleged members of local cliques of the MS-13 street gang were charged with a slew of violent crimes and 7 murders over a 5-year period, prosecutors and police announced. The killings came amid a national conversation about illegal immigration, and prosecutors revealed in a news conference that 10 of the 13 indicted suspects were citizens of El Salvador or Honduras who were in the U.S. illegally, including most of the people directly implicated in the murders.
This Thursday, March 2nd, inmates started a fire in the recreational area of a Nebraska prison and refused to go back to their cells. The prison was placed on lockdown for 3 hours until the conflict was resolved. Officials reported that 40 out of the 128 inmates at the prison were involved in the incident. According to Mike Marvin, the leader of the union that represents corrections employees, the incident occurred after inmates had thrown their mattresses into a fire.
An Obama-era rule on gun background checks was officially overturned on Tuesday. As expected, President Donald Trump signed a bill that had already passed both houses of Congress. At the end of his term, former President Barack Obama mandated the Social Security Administration hand the FBI info on any person with a documented mental health issue who can't manage their disability benefits without a representative. The Obama administration predicted the rule would affect roughly 75,000 people. Supporters argued it kept some with serious mental health issues from buying guns. But opponents argued the rule was too broad and overestimated the risk to the public. To be clear, studies have found having a mental illness doesn't increase a person's chances of using a gun violently and only slightly increases the risk of a gun-related.
3 new types of genetically engineered potatoes will soon find their way to American dinner tables. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency approved 3 types of genetically engineered potatoes last week. The Ranger Russet, Atlantic, and Russet Burbank are apparently immune to the same pathogen that caused the infamous Irish potato famine. Federal officials say they're completely safe to eat. They have only potato genes and get their disease resistance from a type of potato in Argentina that naturally produces a defense. The potatoes are also reportedly less likely to bruise, have a much longer shelf life, and contain lower levels of a chemical that is capable of causing cancer when cooked at high temperatures. Growing them also requires fewer pesticides. The Idaho-based company responsible for the Super Spuds, J.R. Simplot, now has the green light to plant the potatoes this spring and sell them in the fall. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Camry Caldwell.
The Pentagon announced on Thursday that the U.S. has conducted a series of airstrikes in Yemen against al-Qaeda targets located in the Arabian Peninsula. According to a statement by Pentagon spokesman Captain Jeff Davis, more than 20 strikes were launched on Thursday targeting ACAP militants, equipment, and infrastructure in the Yemeni governments of Abiyan, Al-Baida, and Shabwa. Officials at the Pentagon claim that the strikes were delivered by both drones and manned aircraft. According to Davis, the strikes were conducted in partnership with the Yemeni government. In January, ACAP was the target of the raid by Navy SEALs that left 1 U.S. service member and several children dead.
President Trump wants to spend more money on the military. Let's put that in perspective. The U.S. spent about $600 billion on defense last year. That's about as much as the next 12 countries combined. And yet,
I am sending Congress a budget that rebuilds the military, eliminates the defense sequester, and calls for one of the largest increases in national defense spending in American history.
this hike in military spending is part of Trump's broader budget plan, which reportedly includes big cuts to the National Endowment for the Arts, for the Humanities, and to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. But again, let's put that in context. This is the entire budget, and here are the combined budgets of those three agencies. That's the difference they make in the whole federal budget. To put that another way, cutting the National Endowment for the Arts, which supports artistic projects and education, could buy us one F-35 Joint Strike Fighter.
Drowning isn't the only fear for child and female refugees crossing the Mediterranean. UNICEF also found repeated abuse and sexual violence on the route. Those exploitations are some of the exact traumas refugees faced in the countries they're fleeing. Those traveling the migrant route, which begins in North Africa and ends in Italy, are easy targets for smugglers and others who promise to get them to the other side. Before even getting on a boat, refugees are sometimes detained, beaten, and go without food.
They used to beat us every day, no food at all. So the small baby that is dead, they feel sick, no doctor, no medicine.
Refugee women and children often have no choice but to face these realities.